In this video, we introduce you to the vSwitcher interface. As we've shared in the previous lesson, when we first open the program without a file, it looks like this. Do note that the Mac and PC interface may differ slightly. For this lesson, we're using the same file that you downloaded from the previous lesson. So we make sure we have opened it. If we have not, remember that we can go to File, Open, then locate and select the correct BW file. Okay, let's begin. At the very top of our screen is the main menu. If we're using a PC, we have File, Edit, View, Tools, 3D Environment, Garments, and Help. If we're using a Mac, next to File it will say vSwitcher. Some of the options available in the main menu are opening and importing files, saving files, loading the preferences and keyboard shortcuts, adjusting the view options, loading the help site, and more. The help link takes us to the Online Help Center, which is a great resource for more information on the interface and all of the vSwitcher features. Under the main menu, we have the main toolbar. We'll cover this in more detail shortly. The two windows you see are the 2D window and the 3D window. On the left is the 2D window. This is where the garment pattern pieces are displayed. At the top of the 2D window, we have the 2D window toolbar, also known as the Hide and Show toolbar. This is because the tools there mainly hide or show certain aspects of what displays in the 2D window. Note that if we forget what any of these tools does, hovering the mouse over the tool icon displays a tooltip to remind you what the tool does. The first tool toggles the display of textures. The next tool toggles the display of stitches. The third tool on the 2D window toolbar toggles the display of sizes and grading, if any. The next tool, the Allowance tool, toggles the display of seam allowances if there are any. The Internal tool toggles the display of internal lines. Note that the internal lines are colored pink to distinguish them from pattern piece edge lines, which are colored blue. The next tool, Trace Changes, is a little different. When you make changes to a pattern piece, an outline of the original pattern piece before the change is displayed. You'll learn more about this in a separate lesson. The Shape Info tool toggles the display of basic shape information in the 2D window. The Grain Line tool toggles the display of the grain line. The next tool allows you to turn the background grid off and on. And the last tool toggles the rulers, from which we're able to drag guidelines onto the 2D window. Underneath the 2D window toolbar, there's a tool that allows us to flip our pattern pieces to an inside view. Note that there is a yellow bounding box as well as the label at the bottom of the window, Inside View, to remind us what side of the pattern we're on. The window on the right is called the 3D window. This is where the avatar and dressed garment are displayed. Now let's look in the 3D window toolbar, which is at the top of the 3D window. Just like the 2D window toolbar tools, if we forget what any of these tools does, hovering the mouse over the tool icon displays a tooltip. The first tool displays the tension map. The tension map is a visual display of fabric stretch in the length and width of the fabric. The next tool turns on the pressure map. The pressure map is a color-coded display of the pressure on all points of the garment on the avatar. The 3D Measurements tool allows us to measure between points on the avatar and store the results. Next is a tool that toggles Fast Mode. If we're working with very complicated and multi-layered artwork and textures, turning Fast Mode on improves simulation speed. The next tool toggles the Undefined Pieces. More information on this can be found in another lesson. The Ray Trace tool is a feature that allows us to see a real-time preview of the rendered garment using V-Ray. The next tool is a drop-down with the option to change our avatar's pose. There are thumbnails of preset poses along with the option to create our own poses. The pose selected is reflected on the toolbar. On the right side of the 3D window toolbar, there are a set of viewing options. These are preset camera views from the front, left, back, and right, as well as any custom views we may have created. The last button on the top right of the toolbar allows us to undock our 3D window and drag it. For example, this might be useful if we're using an additional monitor. While in the 3D window, here's a useful tip. By pressing the Tab key, we can expand the 3D window. Pressing the Tab key undoes this. Note we can do the same thing with the 2D window. To the left of the 2D window are the Resources tabs. Note the different tabbed sections across the top: 2D, Materials, 3D, and Params. The 2D tab displays an expandable list of pattern pieces and their contents: edges, internal lines, artwork, and so on. The Materials tab has two tabs of its own: Garment and Libraries. The Garment part displays the components that make up our garment: fabrics, seams, artwork, trim, and colors. The Libraries part displays the available material libraries. The 3D tab has three tabs of its own: Avatars, Snapshots, and Closet. The Params tab has two tabs of its own: Rulers and Stitches. On the far right side of the screen is the Context view. This view changes depending on what we select in the Resources tabs: 2D window or 3D window. Let's revisit the main toolbar at the top. The first tool on the left allows us to easily switch from our standard workspace to other workspaces. For instance, we have the Colorway workspace, the Fold and Hang workspace, and more. The standard workspace is the workspace labeled Home. The interface is as we have gone through previously. If we load another workspace, for example, the Colorways workspace, we see a different interface. All of the other workspaces will be covered in more detail in other lessons. To head back to the standard workspace, click Home. The next tool is a drop-down list of recent files. We can open one of these files by clicking on its name. The Save tool is next. Note that it is enabled when there are changes we need to save. Next, we have Undo, History, and Redo. The best practice is to check the history before using Undo or Redo. Our next group of tools are the Action tools: Select, Texture, Stitch, Assign, Insert, and Pen. Note the horizontal contextual menu below the tools. The options here change depending on what tool we select. The mouse cursor also changes depending on what tool we have selected. This is a great way to check to see we are on the right tool. The Arrange tool is next. We use this to tell the program where we would like to arrange our pattern pieces on the avatar. After the Arrange tool is a drop-down for size sets. If we have a graded pattern and graded avatar set, we can simulate our size set on different sized avatar bodies. The next drop-down button is for snapshots. The next drop-down button is the Colorways tool. This gives us a quick preview of the available colorways. We can click View All to take us to the Colorway workspace. The next set of tools are known as simulation tools. Prepare mode is one of the steps we need to complete before simulation. When we are in Prepare mode, we see garments placed with a square grid. We use Prepare mode to check that our pattern pieces are in the right place. We can adjust if needed. The Dress button simulates the garment in the 3D window so that we can see how the garment dresses and drapes on the avatar. Clicking Finish stops the simulation in the 3D window. Note the Undress tool, which allows us to undress the avatar easily and quickly. Lastly, there is the Styling tool, which allows us to make styling adjustments to the dress garment. On the far right side of the main toolbar, we have the camera icon. The camera icon is for when we want to create a render, a tech pack, or print to a file. The Style Zone button allows us to share our creations on our online collaboration platform. And that is an introduction to the vStitcher interface. For more information, visit our help website.